We are here with another episode of Conversations and Connections. We're the official podcast of the Family Crisis Center of East Texas. I'm Stuart Burson. I'm the prevention coordinator for the agency. With me, joined by Will Wyndham, our BIPP coordinator today. What's going on?
Good morning. I'm well. Thank you.
I love it how right when we start recording, Windows decides to let me know that backup isn't turned on. I don't know. I never know if that chime goes out over on the recording or not. I guess we'll find out. So Will's here with me today, and I feel like it's been forever since we've done a podcast. A couple of things, maybe call it a little housekeeping thing. Probably, Will, late last year, probably around October, me and some of the other folks at admin started talking about the podcast. And I love doing the podcast, and it's not going away. But we're going to try to take a little, maybe of a different approach to it. You know, I'm coming from a journalism background, so, you know, I was always writing outlines and questions, and it was more of I wouldn't say formal, because I was always telling everybody that comes onto the podcast, hey, this isn't a formal thing. It's going to be very casual. But I really want this just to be even less structured than that. And let's just, have a bull session, I guess, with my guests, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think in our history of talking about this thing, and if you follow this, you know, out here in rural East Texas, you know, you've talked to just about everybody that's in our world, maybe 2 or 3 times, you know, and so we're always grateful for them to talk to us. But you know, there's a lot of great work out here, but we talk to these folks and we talk to them. So yeah, maybe we just pivot to just talking about other relatable issues.
Well, yeah, you know, and by all means, you know, I'm still going to go out there in the community and talk to our community partners and things. And, you know, it's funny, and I guess it's because I do have a journalism background. I don't mind the microphone at all, but when you ask some people to come on the podcast, I mean, it's a scary thing for them. And so I kind of thought if we take this approach, eventually it will be easier. But also, I wanted kind of to start this out with one of my coworkers that I do have an established relationship with, to kind of get the ball rolling at least, you know. But yeah, so we're gonna try this, and I know we're in March. February was extremely busy. February for me is probably the busiest month I have all year. You know, and just because it's Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and so, you know, I always start the new year coming back from the holidays, hitting the phones to all the schools, all the counselors, all the school administrators, you know, in our area to see if we can come out and talk to their kids. And it just kind of feels like, you know, during a typical week in February, I'm in the office 5 hours.
Yeah, didn't see much of you. I love sort of how this work goes sometimes. You know, you spend the first of the month just making as many phone calls as you can. And then at the end of the month, you just can't believe you drummed up so much work for yourself. So it's just, you know, it's totally inverse, you know.
Well, and you know, and everything I'm saying, I do not want anyone to think that I don't enjoy, because I love going out there and talking and doing presentations and you know, and things like that. I absolutely love doing that. You know, now there's some days when if you're out of school all day and there's 8 periods, you're talking 8 hours almost, or 7 hours probably, you know, at least. And it was nice last week to come into the office for a couple of days and just do some mundane office work for a change.
Yeah, keep those roads hot. And I know we do so much traveling, you're out in the communities and everything, but it just always seems like it's just still never enough. We don't reach enough people, you know, and you just can't you just physically for one person can't do a whole
Yeah.
lot more than that. But yeah, just always so many more people to talk to.
Well, and these are very preliminary numbers, and but I was just kind of looking at because I keep a log, of course, of every place I go, and in February, just for the teen dating violence message, I'm not talking about the other things I do at other schools. I went to 14 different campuses, and I kid you not. Looking at what I've done, I've hit probably about 1,400 kids have heard the message on teen dating violence prevention. Some schools I'm talking to, well, okay, let me kind of backtrack. Some schools here in East Texas, you can hit the whole high school class in one presentation because there may be 40 of them and that's it, right? But then you have campuses that we have an established relationship with, like Diboll, like Hudson, and you're there all day, and usually in one particular class, and you're just going through these kids, and so we're hitting like 200 plus, in one day. So I just want to take the opportunity to just thank everybody, for allowing us to come into your schools. I know, and we all know, if you have any thoughts on this, when you approach a school for a topic of teen dating violence, and when you tell them, okay, we're going to talk, and when I do talk about teen dating violence, we talk about the physical abuse, the verbal abuse, but we also talk about sexual abuse. And when we start talking about sexual abuse and what all that entails, and you start talking about consent, we start talking about sexting, and the laws pertaining that. I think for some schools, that's kind of a scary thought of having somebody from the outside come in to talk to their students about that.
Yeah, I mean, just some of those challenges that have always been and maybe will always be, kind of think about earlier when you're talking about getting folks on this podcast, it's one thing to be like, hey, come sit on this podcast. And then so you get them in the chair and you're like, hey, let's talk about domestic violence related topics, right? So they're like, wait a minute, I got a root canal I got to get to, so they're gone.
Right.
So I think when we approach these schools, it's sort of the same. I mean, they don't know, and if we've got this epidemic of where parents won't talk to their children about kids, it's going to be a little more awkward when you start bringing in some, hey, look, here's Stuart, here's Will, here's someone else that wants to talk to your kids about these topics.
Yeah, well, and I always tell anybody who I approach, hey, we want to come to your school, or we want to come to your church, and talk to your youth group or whatever group it is. And I will, if they ask for the presentation, I'll give them one. And I'm always quick to tell them, hey, anything that you might find objectionable or questionable, hey, let me know. We'll cut it, we'll word it a different way. And I will be happy to say, I will think probably 85 to 90% of the schools will say, no, our kids need to hear this. Do it. So it's not a problem. And for some schools, I think it is a concern. And so we'll, I give them alternatives. We can talk about healthy relationships, which, pertaining to not just romantic relationships, but, your day-to-day relationships with friends and family. When I go to middle schools, a good alternative, which I really recommend, is we talk about bullying. And because that's relationship related, I think. Yeah,
it certainly relates back to all the gender issues that we, that are at the heart of the discussions we talk about.
Yeah. So, I do want to, thank everybody for allowing us to come in. There's always schools out there that are still a little reluctant, and I always tell them, well, you're going to still hear from me next year. I'm still going to, approach this. I do want to give a shout out to Lufkin High School. Since I've been doing this, this year was the first time that I was able to get into Lufkin High School. Now, we didn't do we did not do presentations, but we did have an information table during the lunch periods. And there's a few schools where we do that. And a lot of times, with February being Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, for some schools that's not an opportune time. I've had some schools wanting to reschedule because of STAR testing and all of that, and I get that. But and I do offer that alternative. Well, if we can't come to a presentation, can we come set up a table? We have some brochures on teen dating violence. We usually have some swag that we can give students and some T-shirts and things. So we were able to do that this year at Lufkin High School, and that really, I was really happy that we were finally able to get in there.
Yeah, some folks turning the corner on some of this stuff. And for folks that don't realize what prevention work is, which is mainly what you do, and you spoke to us, it just looks so different from day to day. I mean, one school hugs you at the front door and the other one gives you a metal chair and a table in the corner and is like, whatever you do is whatever you do, So it just looks totally different day to day. But these folks, I think, are realizing that we're going to have these conversations, if no one will have the uncomfortable conversation with your kids at home, at church, well, there's got to be someone that'll do that, and we certainly offer that.
Yeah, right? And one of the things, in all of this time that I've been doing this, and when I first started in prevention, Will, and this, the grant restrictions, the funding for the prevention program at the time would only allow us to do this at SFA and Angelina College, right? And so now, of course, we're under some different grants and whatever, so we are able to go out into the communities more and into the public schools. And I guess what I'm getting at is with all during all these times, I think one time I had a parent call me, and it was actually before I went out to do a presentation, because some schools will give out permission slips, for the kids to have their parents look at, hey, and opt out and everything, or opt in now. And I had one parent call me, and he was not offensive. He said, hey, I got this. I just want to know more about what you're going to be talking to my kid about, so I explained it to him. And he said, hey, you know what? This is fine. I personally think this stuff should be taught at home. Well, in my response, and I'm not being ugly when I say this, is, that's fine. I agree. But so many parents do not talk to their kids about this,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that when you think about this whole conversation is like, why has it been pushed into the public sphere anyway, is just because it doesn't happen behind closed doors anymore, right? Like, so it's just become something that, sort of like we rely on education so much to teach all these other things. Well, it's sort of gotten lumped in there to, hey, well, let's rely on the school to teach our kid about relationships, but we know that the school has no invested interest in your intimate partner relationships as maybe a 6th or 7th grader, right? So they're just hoping things work out, that you're getting that information at home to be healthy. But of course, we know that doesn't happen, and that's why we go out and talk to folks.
Sure. So anyway, again, February, at least from my perspective and for the work that I do, is probably the busiest month. Coming up, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and of course, I'm going to now turn my focus. Every year we do at SFA, we do Safe Summer Break. And that's something we'll talk about later as we get closer. But now my attention is going to probably turn to that. And, my thing with Safe Summer Break, and again, it's a great thing and I love to do it. You have to be part sale. Well, even when you're hitting schools to talk about teen dating violence, you kind of got to sell it. You kind of got to be a salesman, and I guess with Safe Summer Break, the thing that makes me, now once I do a first few of these things, I'm fine, but it's that initial going out, because the thing with Safe Summer Break, you're going to local businesses. Hey, would you like, we're looking for door prizes. We're looking for food donations. Organizations. Hey, do you want to come, be at this event? But especially asking for food donations and for door prizes, it's just always, it makes me just a little, I don't know what it is. I have some people tell me that I'm definitely an extrovert, and I don't know about that, but I just feel a little, I guess it's almost a bit of bashfulness, I guess, about going to a random business and doing a sales pitch and asking for something.
Yeah, never comfortable, right? Like you're just like sort of grifting on someone. You're like, hey, come on, definitely that. And again, just we talk about these things so casually, but I think if someone just walked into our world, they wouldn't understand the amount of work or the sort of uncomfortableness that goes with like sitting outside in the Chili's parking lot, sort of mentally readying yourself to ask for the manager to see if you can get some chips and salsa, But we were used to that. Other folks may not, but it's such an undertaking, and sort of like the teen dating. At least it's putting these things in people's minds.
Oh, of course. But it's the thing about Safe Summer Break. I will give kudos. Usually our interns are very good about helping me out. Yes. Especially if they're in Nacogdoches, they're going to SFA. They know these businesses probably a little bit better than I do, and they have some insight of, who will donate and who may not donate, or I have an idea and things like that. But again, that's going to be in April. That'll be next month, and whenever we get closer to that, we'll definitely talk more about that on the podcast. But we'll turn our attention to that. And of course, always have the standing gigs I have every, throughout the year. Lufkin ISD has their after school program. Do stuff with the Boys and Girls Club, with Angelina Juvenile Detention. We're always doing something with them, but it's just that extra, leaving my place at 6:45 to make it over to Brooklyn ISD by 8, for a day of presentations. It's kind of nice to kind of get a little bit of a reprieve. But I really do, and I have friends that always tell me, Will, and you make, because with your work, you do presentations all the time too. I don't see how you do that. I can't get up in front of. I could never get up in front of people and talk, and for me, I love it.
Yeah, but it's sort of like a fear of being on this podcast and you just talking in the same room you talk in, just in a microphone. Yeah, I don't understand it. But, public speaking in college when I came through was a scary thing. And I think the consensus was that. But it's sort of like, in these programs you run, people have this idea that, like, if you speak up, people are going to, like, throw rotten tomatoes at you or something. But it's really a lot less than that, right? Like, nothing bad is going to happen when you public speak. I mean, people are going to like it. People are not going to like it. But typically what doesn't happen is getting mobbed with rotten vegetables in the parking lot, right? So,
right. And I go into this being fully aware, like, look, I try to put myself into a junior at high school. Well, probably the last thing you want to hear is some old man up in front of the class talking to you about the consequences of sexting and sending nudes, and one thing, and this probably stems from me not having a fear with public speaking, but I try to engage the students, and I'll ask them questions, and I want us to have a back and forth, So I will ask them, what do you think about dating violence? What does that mean? We'll talk about gaslighting. Someone tell me what gaslighting is, And, sometimes you'll have the kid that raises their hand. Usually in a group of 30, you'll have the core 3 or 4 they're going to answer all the questions. Then you have the ones that they think if they don't look at you, you're not going to call on them. Because I'll tell them, if no one raises their hand, I'm going to call on someone.
Yeah.
And again, I have some friends that like, oh my God, I hate it when people do that. You shouldn't do that to those kids. But I want them to be, and I think part of that also is just you got to learn how to communicate. You have to learn to interact with people in public. And, and I'd give them a heads up. Okay, guys, look, we're going to talk about things that are going to be very uncomfortable. And I am going to ask you questions. I want someone to raise their hand. And, but I just always think it's kind of funny because I do have some friends that are like, man, you shouldn't do that to those kids. I would never do that. But
It's always interesting to, we never get too much feedback from, the high school kids, which is just a massive undertaking for what could you give out? 1,400 evaluations and then read through all of them. And then you got high school kids that are, they're drawing pictures of dragons and stuff on your evaluation form. And you're like, so what are we doing? But you really wonder, what they do think about that stuff. So really the only sort of idea we have is what we would have thought about it in high school. And certainly no one talked to me about it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so, it's just a message for these kids to hear, in the world of research and everything. Yeah, it'd be great to know whatever kid thought about this presentation, but we've been in so many, man. There's a kid with his back to you picking his nose in the back corner. You can't worry about that one kid because there's 200 other people in there,
Well, so. And, I think when I first started doing this work, it bothered me a whole lot more. But I kind of have learned to think, what? They may look like they're disengaged, but you still don't know what they're absorbing. They may be listening to every word you're saying while they're, staring down at their desk, or whatever. But you know what my favorite group to work with is?
What's that?
Middle schoolers. I love that middle school population. And I think what it is that they're old enough to really kind of care about what you say, and they are kind of interested. They're not nearly as standoffish about wanting to answer a question. And I'm trying to pose this the best way I can. They're not so old to where they have that teen, I don't need to listen to you, or I know everything type of, But I absolutely love it when I get to talk to middle schoolers because I think they just hang on and they're just a lot more engaged, I think.
Maybe we're not quite through like gender washing at that age. You know what I mean?
You may very well have a point.
Something about that. But I do have an 8-year-old at home, and that they're already worried about relationships. It's just kind of shocking, how that makes it in at such a young age there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I hear you. Well, let's move on a little bit. Okay, so to get everyone up to speed with Will, when I say BIPP coordinator, that's our Batters Intervention and Prevention Program. And again, Will, I know you've been on the podcast several times, but just for those who may not know, BIPP, what are we talking about here?
BIPP, Batters Intervention, is a male-only program here in Lufkin, and it was just, again, the Crisis Center brought this around to address the other side of domestic violence, which is, we're serving all these women. It's mostly reactive services. So in order to be preventative or proactive, so sort of in the same realm, there's this BIPP program for men who've offended. And so they come to their male-only groups, 24 weeks of those. And we just sort of talk about male issues, why men would be violent, what's behind, the male side of intimate partner violence. So that's what that is, yeah.
And I think a lot of times, our programs aren't identical, but I think a lot of the topics and subjects that I talk to the public about, you do the same. I think sometimes our stuff kind of overlaps a little bit, for sure.
I think, and really, prevention, when you think of prevention for folks that don't, sit in an office all day and do this, is really more about like the attitudes around, attitudes a male might have about a female, attitudes a male might have about power and control, attitudes they might have about gender, homosexuality, and things. That's a lot of prevention, right?
Yeah.
And so BIPP, we do talk a lot about that. We address attitudes of men and things, but, we do eventually offer some skills and things to them. So it differs a little bit. Prevention, A lot of short, sweet, not a lot of long programming there. But we incorporate a lot of prevention. Just spend 24 more weeks on some of the other skills
Right.
and things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, BIPP's rolling along. I'd like to say we had worked ourselves out of business, but we haven't. We've picked up Livingston or Polk County, and that's gone well. But keeps you, busier. More men, more participants, but. In the last few years, we've had nothing but good feedback for the most part on BIPP. We've been doing it almost a decade, and it's hard to, gauge what people really think because while we do evaluations, I'll tell you this, we will ask men who finish the program in an evaluation their final night, please let us know what was most interesting and what was the most difficult to talk about. Well, not surprisingly, both answers or what we went over that day in BIPP. So there you go. I mean, there's just some of the thought that's put into these evaluations when you get them back. So we're assuming that everyone will answer genuinely, and these guys are sort of done. I mean, they spent 24 weeks here. I'm like, hey, man, one more sheet of paper to fill out. And you're like, what's most interesting? And they'll literally write, like, what we talked about today in literal, things like that.
Well,
so,
and I think that goes along with what I have never been a fan of with talking about evaluations because, we used to do evaluations in prevention back when we was under that federal grant and all that. But what I did not like is that we never did they were always post evaluations and we would ask them, how did you feel before you went through this? And I don't think after you've been through a training, whether it's, a few hours or 2 days, to all of a sudden now you have all this information that's been given to you to go back, well, how did I feel before I heard all this? And I don't think you can really give an accurate, and that's my opinion. And I've done trainings. I've been on the training end or the trainee end where I've had to do that. I think if we're going to do that, well, let's do a survey before we even begin on how you feel about all that. But that's just me, and maybe there's more science, to doing it that way than what that's beyond my my expertise. But I just always feel like aren't going to get genuine responses after a training when you're asking people, how did you feel before this?
Yeah, odd ways to get to sort of the question you're looking to answer, how effective was this training? Well, we could make that as easy or complicated as we want,
Right.
And so I think some people really overthink that, but stats and evaluation, that could be a job on its own. And, here at this agency, we have one person that just puts in numbers as almost a full-time job.
Right.
So, don't get me started as being a professional statistician or whatever.
So, I was talking when I talk to students about them not being engaged. How are the guys at BIPP? Because these guys are being, well, and again, it's kind of like whenever I go to a school, I mean, these students aren't electing to come hear me. I mean, they're being made to sit in class and listen to me. These guys are ordered by the court to come to BIPP. How enthused are they about hearing you talk? And it's a long time that they come to BIPP. It's a long, it's
24 weeks of BIPP group to complete the program, to officially get a certificate of completion from us. Again, I think, in the world of social work, you're breaking down your clients, you see into two different factions, the folks that are voluntarily there for help and the folks that are involuntarily there. Most of these men are involuntarily here, although they have made a choice to come and sign up. None of them are happy to be here. They're in various stages. I would say behavior change is an odd thing. That's really what we operate in here. And so I think, we use the group avenue. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for a man to sort of either decide if he's going to buy in, I would say. That's about our washout time. If you enter into a 6 to 8 week, a 24-week program, in about 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to know whether you can do this, it's something you can move forward with, or it's just total BS and you're going a different direction. So, but I think a lot of men are responsive. Again, I think as we talk about thinking back to 6th grade, junior high, high school, being talked about these things, Maybe these men would have been interested back then and they wouldn't be where they are now. But I think at some point, most men are at least interested in some of the topics we talk about because, really it relates directly to their self-interest, So at some point, continuing to be violent, the majority of the world focuses on, the external people that hurt. But in the world of BIPP, it's pretty clear that if you spend some time in there, the person that suffers the most and ends up costing the most of is the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and when that directly affects the man, it's in his self-interest to make some changes. And, of course, we appeal to all that, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you doing this. This is kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing, at least me asking you about this. But I just wanted to start up these podcasts again. We had the holidays, and like I said, February was just so busy, and I was on the road so much. But I do want to kind of start taking a new approach to these and try to see how this goes. So if you have any thoughts or questions, you can give us a call. If you feel like you need the services of the Family Crisis Center, we do have that toll-free 24-hour-a-day hotline. That's 1-800-828-7233. And I'm asking, if you're listening, give us a subscription. Subscribe to Conversations and Connections. You can do that through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much YouTube. I know we're on YouTube. Pretty much any podcast service of your choice. Be the voice. I always have this tagline. You know who came up with that tagline? Will did.
Yay!
Be the voice, if not for you, for someone else.